achieving net zero is going to be the biggest challenge that humanity has ever faced, and also the greatest opportunity for creativity and collaboration. So this event actually is a great example of that collaboration in practice, because it's working with Sarah and Esla and as part of the London Climate Action Week. So I'm delighted for that to be here. And I'm also, really privileged to have had Paul and Kieran give their time. Obviously, they didn't just turn up and give that speech off the cuff, however much it was very well presented. They did a lot of time working on that. So I'm just going to give you a little bit more about Lawyers for Net Zero to help contextualize what we're going to be going through in our panels, to help talk to the title of Delivering on Net Zero, the Role of the In-House Lawyer. Because our focus, if we were to summarize it in one sentence, is on how in-house lawyers can help their organization avoid greenwash and achieve a legitimate net zero. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing you need to do is, with anything like this, you need to convene a community of like-minded individuals who can support each other, share ideas. Then what we're offering is focus and guidance through our net zero action principles, which I'll just quickly detail those in their high level. They're champion net zero internally, deliver rapid practical action, learn and share key knowledge, influence suppliers, and then champion net zero externally, which, Kieran particularly there has just done a fantastic job of, and the other 5 panelists which will be joining us will also be doing Principle 5, championing net zero internally. So it's all well and good, though, to have a community, everybody kind of like sharing with each other, and also to have the focus. But what we need is momentum. We need to keep this going. And so how we've been doing that is working directly with the champions, with the in-house counsel that Kieran's one, you'll be hearing from 5 others, in what we call action learning groups, which is a co-coaching process, a facilitated process where I currently have been facilitating it. 4 counsel come together regularly to share their successes and challenges and how they deal with that. We've had a first pilot with a program of 20 counsel across 5 different action learning groups. And we've actually got further 15 counsel teed up to start the second pilot process. And actually we'll be opening up after this event for further counsel to join this our second pilot of it. So the questions that we're going to be focusing on in both the panel 1 and panel 2 are actually related to the net zero action principles. So panel 1 is going to be looking at principle 1, championing net zero internally, and how do you deliver rapid practical action. And then panel 2 will be looking at learning and share, how learn and share key information. So if I can welcome onto stage the panelists from panel 1, that would be Tamuna, Anthony, and Alessandro. And then what I will do is just going to ask them a simple question, and then allow them to introduce themselves, because the topic of this panel is how in-house lawyers are helping ensure legitimate net zero is delivered. So what we are looking for from those guys, and we'll start off with Tamuna, is if you can introduce yourself, your role and organisation, etc., and then why you're taking climate action as just a little bit of more introduction. But then particularly I'm interested in is what's your personal view of what legitimate net zero is, and then I'm going to be asking all 3 of you that same question. So we'll start off with you, Tamuna.
Thank you, Adam. Hi, everyone. I'm Tamuna Cheishvili. I'm a transactional lawyer in the investment banking division of Deutsche Bank, and I advise the business on structured products with a particular focus on emerging markets. So the legal function in an investment bank is clearly a control function, but in addition to identifying and managing legal and reputational risks, I very much see my role as being the enabler of the bank's vision and key priorities. And I think that is particularly true in relation to sustainability and Deutsche Bank's sustainability strategy. To give an example, one of the one of the sustainability targets that Deutsche Bank has specifically committed to delivering is the provision of sustainable financing of at least 200 billion euros by the end of 2025. And I think I see delivery of that specific target, for example, as very much a key part of my role and responsibility as in-house lawyer at Deutsche. In terms of why I'm taking climate action, both in my personal and professional life, it is because, frankly, the epic and tragic scale of the climate and nature crisis. And I was just thinking, listening to Paul with his opening remarks, I was thinking about how, the financial systems are by now familiar with the so-called black swan events in the form of the 9/11 or the current pandemic we're going through. But the big question at the moment, I think, is what color is the next black swan going to be? And if not enough is done in the next 10 years about the climate change and the environmental degradation, I think it's quite possible that the next black swan could be a green swan with a devastating impact on the lives of everybody really on the planet, and including the global economic structures that we take for granted. And I think as part of that, your question about what is a legitimate net zero, and it's so important to emphasize, the ambitious part of net zero targets and delivery of the net zero goal. I think for me, legitimate net zero is about very much raising the bar. And again, in the context of financial systems, I would say that for too long, financial systems did not actually price in the negative impact of economic activity in the form of CO2 emissions or deforestation or economic inequality. And I think now is the time to transform, that massive mammoth task of transforming this existing system to a new one, where actually sustainability is not a nice to have, and where risk is more accurately priced and financial activity is actually aligned with planetary boundaries and human rights.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. And so now I'd like to ask the same question of Anthony. So if you can join us on stage, and then it's basically yourself, why you're taking the action, and about what's your view of legitimate net zero.
So Anthony Kenny, I'm a lawyer within the legal team of GlaxoSmithKline, GSK. So my role within GSK is kind of split into two. One is to support all the central corporate functions, and so I've got to, which includes our communications and government affairs team. So through that, I've come across obviously our communications around GSK's commitment to net zero and nature positive, and also our sponsorship of COP26. But also on the corporate side, I do deals as well. And actually, what springs to my mind, I think we're yet to see this really grow. But increasingly, I think corporates are going to have to look in the due diligence space in terms of what targets we're buying and what they're doing about. So that's another, I think, area as lawyers we're going to need to focus on. So that's my role. I mean, I think I've very much come to lawyers for net zero in a personal capacity because, I've been supporting within GSK the ESG more through the lens of human rights and labor rights. I've always been interested in climate change, but I think thanks to meeting Adam, that's kind of really been sort of re-energized. But I'm approaching this in a personal capacity. But what's exciting me is about this initiative is that it inspires you listening to others and their journey to have conversations internally. And it's surprising how open parts of the business are to having legal support in this space. So I'm hoping in the next weeks and months, I'm going to be able to combine my personal interests with the interest of GSK to support this really important topic. And I have to say, before I move on to let's do that now. So with the why, I have to say, why get involved in climate change? Just so much existential threat, the scale of this, and actually what's required to change it. It's going to change. We're going to need to change how we live. I mean, it's as simple as that. And how we operate as businesses is a huge challenge. And I think the power of an organization like Lawyers for Net Zero is that we're going to really need to collaborate and combine all that brain power to because what strike like Tamuna and Kieran and others, I probably get bombarded with updates from law firms and different organizations, and why would we have 100 different law firms focusing on this? Why couldn't we combine that brain power into kind of and focus it? So this is why I think the Lawyers for Net Zero and it can do the same for the internal community. And the why, I mean, I think also just my children. I look at my 6-year-old and my 3-year-old and think, what kind of future are we creating for them? And what's really inspired me in the past 12 months is my daughter coming home after having learned things at school and saying, what are we doing around recycling? That should go in that bin, and going into the woods and really caring about waste and rubbish on the floor. And to see that, and also just even as simple things like I bought a new iPhone last year, and talking to the sales assistant at Apple, she said she was having sleepless nights because she was worried about the climate issue. And you have a conversation like that, and it really just brings home to you that for the younger generation in particular, they really are quite scared about what's happening. So I think all of those things, I think it's a super important topic. And Adam, kudos to you for setting up this group, and I think kudos to you for also. And one of the benefits, the benefits of being part of this come every day. And I think one just today, I mean, hearing Paul speak, being in the same panel as someone like Paul is just awe-inspiring. I mean, Paul, wow, what a presentation. I mean, the fact that we can share this stage with you is just amazing. Legitimate net zero, I think that's really, we've touched on a lot of this already today. It's really about making sure that the organizations we support, and indeed how we support each other through this organization, it's all about authenticity. It's all about understanding the scale of the challenge. It's not about speaking good things and producing good brochures. It's about action and walking the talk. It's about understanding that what we're going to need to do is going to be very disruptive changes and owning that and being accountable for that. And I think what's already happening, which is nice to see through government bodies and the NGO community, is a move from talking to actual measuring. I think that's going to be really important to track how we move forward, and some of it will be baby steps. But I think in conclusion, I say, Adam, one of the great things about this group is that it's a community, a building community that's going to increasingly share. We're all in different stages of the community, and some of us will be able to go in, have roles within our organizations to make changes. Some of us will not, but we can all contribute to the group. We can all contribute ideas, and I think that's going to be so important. Combined collective thinking to solve this really big challenge.
Fantastic. Thank you for that impassioned share, Anthony. And if I can now invite Alessandro to join us on stage and talk about briefly, introduce yourself, what your why you're taking the action, and then also what you are seeing as being legitimate net zero.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. And thank you for changing the order, because I was going to do anyway. I am the Deputy General Counsel at Colt. We are a high bandwidth connectivity provider and data center provider operating pretty much everywhere in Europe, in Far East Asia, and we have a small presence in the US, focusing on the B2B market. What brings me personally is a similar set of beliefs that Anthony has. I would like to focus a little bit more on our institutional role as lawyers, and I'd like to pick up a couple of points that I agree violently with. First is something that Kieran mentioned about the fact that we speak to everyone at the highest level, and we've got almost 90 participants. I suspect that some of them feel, okay, I'm not a GC, I'm not deputy GC, why would people listen to me? And I'd like to answer that question preemptively, so to speak. Lawyers have a unique position in that they have more touch points into the organization than I think any other function, because other functions are very siloed. Sales have their sales target, marketing have their marketing initiatives, procurement have their cost reduction. We see all of this. So we are uniquely, I think, positioned to introduce the urgency of action for net zero in every conversation we have, which brings me neatly to the first principle of champion net zero internally. We can do that, and we can do that because we can have a discussion in the supply chain reshaping that, for instance, post-pandemic, a lot of your organization surely are considering. So if you're thinking of nearshoring, reshoring, changing, adding resilience, then emissions of your supply chain can be a part of that discussion, need to be part of that discussion if you want that supply chain to be future-proof and resilient. Contracts. You may have a very large organization as customers. Colt does work with some of the largest tech companies on the planet. So maybe your angle is that you need to follow your customers. It's not a secret that Microsoft and Amazon and Google have ambitious targets. If we're part of their supply chain, we need to follow in their footsteps and deliver, contractually deliver, because they're not shrinking violets when it comes to contracts. So each element of what we do touches into net zero, but also is an opportunity for you in the attendees of this world to think, what is the best angle of my organization? And it could be, for instance, that in your organization is risk. So if lawyers in your organization are seen as risk managers and they see everything through the prism of avoiding risk, fine, use that angle and then say, we've underestimated historically how risky climate change is on our supply chain, on the viability of our customers, on the viability of some of our operations, and look at that, because that maybe lands in your organization better than a customer angle, because maybe your customers are not terribly concerned, or you don't think they're concerned. So I think my ask to you is think what really would work in your organization and see what can work. Because if you were the GC and if the CEO called you tomorrow, summoned you to her office and said it is now her first priority to get to net zero, you would find a way. You would ask people, you would ask your peers, you would ask your law firms, you would look at everything you do through the prism of net zero. So that's what I think we're all trying to do. Different stages of maturity, baby step for some people are more mature. It's absolutely fine. But this conversation I started is, I think, extremely important, which brings me to your second question, Adam, which is, what is a legitimate net zero target? And then I go back to Paul's mention, which has also been picked up by Tamuna, I think, about authenticity. And it's the fact that I am quite lucky and comfortable that this interest and belief of mine aligns perfectly with Colt's values and with Colt's aggressive strategy for carbon reduction and environmental sustainability in general. But I think there is a general trend overall that organization for profit especially needs to demonstrate that they are transparently and authentically doing what they say they would be doing. And lawyers tend to be stewards. There's an element of stewardship. I mean, your GC possibly is the secretary to the board. In some cases, unofficially, he's the guardian of the ethics of the company. Sometimes he or she is the chief ethical officer. So I think when there is an element of reputational risk, of is the company really fulfilling its purpose, its mission, people do look at the general counsel and at the general counsel function. And I think is there that we can then apply the same level of scrutiny and say, no, this is greenwashing. And it's exactly as when we tick the box about Modern Slavery Act, but we haven't really looked into our supply chain. So if you are doing this properly, then legitimate net zero is just being open and transparent and honest about the fact that you are trying to live those values and you're exposing what you're doing, even if it's for some people not good enough and might draw criticism, but it shows progress and it shows transparency.
Fantastic. That's great. I think between the three of you, you've got some really rich understanding there for what is legitimate net zero. And also, Anthony and Alessandro, you kind of picked in some things actually which were from the second question. So depending on how time's going, we might just finish off with Tamuna answering the last question, which is, what have you been doing to champion net zero internally? And both Anthony and Alessandro did answer some of that. So I think what we'll do is we'll finish off with Tamuna. So you're bookending this, giving what your journey has been in Deutsche Bank around this. So if we can bring Tamuna back on stage, please.
Hi. So I mean, I echo a lot of what I've heard already from Alessandro and Anthony about this, but I think in terms of Deutsche Bank specific activity, I would say that I would focus on two aspects. One is supporting net zero as a member of business-facing legal function, and secondly, within the legal department itself. On the first point in relation to business-facing activity, we've already heard from Alessandro the greenwashing pitfalls that by now we are kind of familiar with. So for me, my contribution is very much about formulating internal controls and operating processes in relation to sustainability-linked financial products and transactions, with a view of avoiding those greenwashing pitfalls and actually prioritizing substance over form. I also work on sustainable finance structures and transactions. And in that context, in the transactional context, where the use of proceeds of a particular financial product is for green purposes, or the clients have taken on ESG performance targets as part of a financial contract, I think lawyers, in-house lawyers, can do a lot in examining, scrutinizing the substance of what is being achieved. And is it ambitious enough? Is it specific enough? Is it measurable? Is there some room for improvement? Are we actually moving the dial here? So I see that as being, this kind of, when I say business-facing side of things, that I see that as a key issue. Within the legal department itself, I've been greatly assisted by the pilot scheme sessions that we've had at Lawyers for Net Zero, and some of the ideas that have been generated by the participants have helped me to raise climate change as a kind of a regular theme at our team meetings. I think I want to emphasize that this is very much a dynamic journey. We're very much at the start of the journey in many ways, because lawyers and non-lawyers are at different stages of kind of embracing ESG and kind of understanding the scope of it. So talking about climate change, sustainability, ESG, what does this mean at team meetings? Also speaking to senior colleagues, to the wider legal department in terms of not only sort of purely legal and technical and regulatory side of ESG. There's, I mean, mountains of regulation and policy on ESG, and of course lawyers inevitably end up being involved on the technical side and interpreting the regulation, advising the business, and so on. But I want to emphasize very much that while that skill is very valuable, what is actually really important is stressing that all in-house counsel have a role to play in highlighting the importance and the profile of environmental concerns to their business, and making sure that the business integrates those ESG concerns into their decision making. So you don't have to be an ESG expert, you don't have to know the EU Sustainable Finance Action Plan inside out to be able to make a difference. I think what you need is a fire in the belly and a determination to actually have a sense of purpose and a determination to make a positive impact and positive social change.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tamuna. So I'm going to thank panel one and invite you to elegantly depart from the stage. And